All right, I just want to thank everybody for coming out to Plymouth Pride's first speaker rally on the anniversary of the 14th Amendment being upheld so that all LGBTQ plus people can marry. So that's cool. And our very first speaker is going to be Melissa Ferretti, the chairwoman of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe.
Okay, so I'm going. Can you hear me okay? Oh, boy. Hi, can you hear me now? So I have to hold my book here, so forgive me. I can probably do it. Why don't I do that, and then I'll hand off the pages.
Okay, sure.
Jeez, I'm going to get the wind off. It's not going to be on my side. Okay, so I wanted to start with my introduction. Wani Motalpin, Natasuis, Melissa Ferretti, Nutomas, Sikwana Makwapaklet, Ka Natai Patuxit. What I said to you in my traditional language is good morning. My name is Melissa Ferretti. I am from Herring Pond tribe of Borndale and Patuxet. So today I have been asked to offer today's land acknowledgement. Today, land acknowledgements are used by Native people and non-Native people to recognize the first peoples of this land, who are the original stewards to this place and in that which we now live. Today, we give thanks to this sacred place at Patuxet, what is known today as Plymouth. This sacred land beneath our feet is at the heart of what we call the Wampanoag Nation and the traditional homelands of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. The history of Patuxet, New Plymouth, is complex, and many other Native people also share in a deep connection to this land. Our people have called this place home for thousands of years. Our ancestors are buried here, and our descendants can still be found here today, along with the many other tribal communities and direct descendants throughout the Commonwealth. What happened here on these lands impacted all Native nations across New England and eventually spread far and wide across this country, and into the Canadian Maritimes. The spread of colonization resulted in armed conflict, murder, assaults, enslavement, dispossession of land, and what was a direct assault on all Native cultures and life ways. May we never forget the first peoples of this land, all our ancestors whose sacrifices made it possible for us to sustain our bond as a direct tribal distinct community and to maintain our relationship to our original homelands here in Plymouth and Upper Cape Cod. So, for those of you who do not know me, I am the current chairwoman of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I am a proud Herring Pond Wampanoag mother and grandmother, serving my community as a second-term tribal chairwoman. I am the very first Herring Pond woman to ever serve in this role. Thank you so much. I have lived on my homelands all my life. Today, we're here to celebrate all of you, amazing, strong, and resilient people. We're here to celebrate you and our own Herring Pond Wampanoag members who are part of the LGBTQ plus and Two-Spirit communities. We're here to celebrate our human rights, our inherent rights as people. Indigenous people have always viewed people as people. We are all creatures from the Great Spirit And we have always believed that it is part of the natural law to love, live, and respect one another. We have always been a peaceful people. We do not judge individuals based on the color of their skin or the gender role they choose. You are judged based on your character and how you treat others in your community and abroad. We need to remember that it was our guests to this land that had other perceived notions about gender, identity, and sexuality. Growing up here in America's hometown, like many Native people, I often felt invisible. I was born a white-skinned Wampanoag child, yet my sister, of the very same parents, was born dark-skinned, further adding to the lack of identity I so often felt growing up. Sorry, I have too much hair. Sure. Don't misunderstand me. I love this town. I love this waterfront. It holds all the memories of my childhood and that of my relatives, friends, and their families. I love my country. I'm a proud Native. I'm a proud American. We're all born different from one another. That is the beauty of individuality, is it not? When we think about the modern pan-Indian terms like Two-Spirit, coined in 1991, which is sometimes simply thought of as indigenous and gay. But the meaning, history, and role of Two-Spirit people is far more complex. Sometimes said to refer to individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, transgender, transsexual, or gender fluid. Two-Spirit is more about the embodiment of two genders residing within one person, often even thought of as a third spirit. But as said by Indian country today, these names and roles go back to a time before Western religion. Two-Spirit is not a new age movement, but rather a reclamation of two spirits, rightful place in Native culture. I'm hardly an expert on this topic. What I have learned is that indigenous communities have their own distinct set of traditional values for the gender variant members in their communities, and the social status and the spiritual roles that these individuals fulfill. And these attitudes about gender and sex may differ very greatly from one another. In some tribes and First Nations, storytelling and oral histories have passed down of individuals who had a special standing. Their status among their people was told to come from dreams, visions, and accomplishments, great accomplishments, that revealed them as healers or societal and ceremonial leaders. In other tribes, they may have no special status and were sadly ridiculed. And still, in other tribes, they were accepted and lived as equals in a day-to-day life. In a recent article called Two-Spirit Term Acknowledges Historical Acceptance of Non-Binary Indigenous Peoples, they talk of the Navajo refers to Two-Spirit as the ever-changing ones, the ones who weave and bring balance. They are known as to walk between two worlds, those who are able to stand in the middle, creating harmony. They are the gifted ones, blessed with two spirits, who are able to provide balance and facilitate healing in individuals, communities, and nations. I want to share this quote from the very same article. Colonized minds like to think of gender as the body you are in. Within indigenous worldviews, we understand that it is your spirit. It is the spirit that is your gender and the roles that you take on, the skills that you have, the responsibilities that you hold, and ultimately the gifts you offer the world. It is not a man or woman, it is much, much more. To all my dear Two-Spirit LGBTQ brothers and sisters here today, just know that Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe people are your allies. We're your friends, your brothers, your sisters. Katapatash. Thank you for having me. Peace Kanash. Later. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. So our second speaker is going to be Phoenix Fiorillo.
Hey guys. When I came out as transgender 5 years ago, I was terrified. I was terrified of how my family would react. I was terrified of all the hardships I knew would come with it. And most of all, I was terrified of how isolating it would be. I knew that people would look at me differently, and that I was opening myself up to ridicule and an endless amount of uncomfortable conversations. And that fear doesn't go away, it actually just gets more and more justified each day. With every time I have to second guess whether it's worth correcting someone about my pronouns, or explaining how asking if I've had the surgery isn't really an appropriate question to ask a stranger. What I didn't expect, though, was how powerful the community would be. It's easy to feel alone when you're LGBT. We don't see ourselves accurately represented on TV. The only time we're on the news is when some southern state is enacting bills against us or when one of us is killed. And they don't talk about us in schools unless a parent complains about the bathrooms we use. I wish that I could go back to the early days of my transition and tell myself that I don't have to try so hard to gain the approval of all the cishet people around me. I would put up with their snide comments and invasive questions because I believed that that was what it would take for them to respect me and understand me beyond seeing me as the trans kid. I want to go back and tell myself that there is a group of people ready to accept me as I am, without pretense or conditions, and that I should be focusing my energy on them, you guys, instead. It's no secret that we are facing extremely difficult times right now. Last year, we lost 44 trans people to violent hate crimes, and this year we've already lost at least 30. Most of these deaths have been Black and brown transgender women who have been at the forefront of every resistance movement and pioneered so much of our culture, and yet they're our most vulnerable members. These losses are devastating, and they can make us feel really hopeless. What can we do? How do we change the minds of everyone who believes that we aren't worthy of respect and of basic human decency? The reality is that we won't change their minds, but we don't need to because we have each other, and we are strong. I look at all of you, and I see your joy. I see your stories and your experiences, both good and bad. I see how rich our history is. I see the way we gather today to celebrate and share in each other's joy. Time and time again, we have stood up for ourselves, whether it was through protesting, rioting, or carving out spaces just so we could exist in a world that is constantly trying to push us out. All of our success we have won on our own, and we have to keep winning. Every day, politicians find more ways to distort our lives in order to fearmonger and incite political violence against us. Our rights to adopt, participate in sports, and medically transition are all under constant attack by state and federal government. Hate groups are coming out of the woodwork to squash our celebrations, and many of us here have had personal run-ins with some of them. And I don't say all this because I want to be a downer. I say this because I want all of us to get motivated, to be inspired to stand up and fight against oppression so we ensure that the future of this community is as bright and prosperous as it can be. When we get together and fight for each other, there is nothing we can't accomplish. So I want all of you to continue to push for what we deserve. Don't let the world beat you into submission. Protest, run for local government, call out that homophobe at your workplace. But for today, celebrate with your community, because the biggest act of resistance is our pride. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoenix. That was awesome. All right, our next speaker is going to be Andy Loretz. Andy is a school teacher here in Plymouth, and actually was Phoenix's teacher at one point. Yes. So that's a great coincidence.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Loretz. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm just trying to pull up my speech. Sorry. Alright, there we go. Alright, so, after being a teacher for more than 10 years, I openly admitted to some students I was queer only 2 weeks ago. It just goes to show we have a long way to go. As part of my journey of becoming more comfortable in my own skin and taking up space in spite of those who still think it's a sin, I decided next year to co-facilitate our school's Gay-Straight Alliance, a large act of defiance against my own feelings. A large act of defiance against my own feelings of fear, shame, anxiety, constant vigilance, the coping strategies you are forced to learn when your true self is considered too much of a burden. For loved ones and others who can't seem to bear the weight of their own fear about love which does not conform to their false sense of norm, but rather is bigger, wider, fuller, more inclusive, more far-reaching. You know, like Jesus himself was always preaching. When I said I would lead the GSA, the safe space, the refuge where gay kids can be gay, most colleagues responded with the best of intentions. But one came at me with their helpful condescensions. They said, "It's better if this club has less of an agenda." As if I'm going to drown the whole school with gay propaganda. You see, you're only allowed to keep it light and keep it social, but don't you dare actually educate or get too emotional about our past and history of our centuries-long fight against oppression, injustice, and pushing back against the might of a culture which ingrains in you that gay is wrong, the same culture that's resided in Plymouth 400 years long. 17 years after the Mayflower landed, that's 1637, Plymouth made it clear there was no place here or in heaven for people like Thomas Roberts and John Alexander, whose acts were considered beyond just a philander. For being gay, they were punished and publicly whipped, and their human and civil rights completely stripped. So-called saints took a burning hot iron to John's shoulder, giving him a brand. Torturing gays was somehow living in better accordance with God's command than allowing those who love differently to be themselves. Instead, from Plymouth, John was forever expelled. So fast forward to Plymouth even just this past week, where it seems like the vicious, never-ending streak of fear and hatred for those who present differently continues and morphs and moves ever persistently, when drag queens reading books to kids is deemed more of a threat than screaming at those same children transphobic epithets. They cry, "Save the children from deviant indoctrination," ironically not recognizing their intellectual constipation. You see, it is they who don't want to open their hearts and minds and leave their doctrine of hate and exclusion behind. They can't bear to see acceptance and inclusion. Our town must no longer accept their pearl-clutching confusion. It is the attempt to stifle, restrict, and limit queer lives that's oppressive, a symptom of their closed-minded worldview. It's regressive. It wants to take us back to 1637 and make Plymouth great again. Shove us queers back in the closet forever and ever. Amen. We can no longer abide intolerant bigots who are butthurt about men wearing makeup, a wig, and a skirt, and women who love women and men who love men, and our bravest of the brave are friends who are trans. No, we can't let the bigots decide what's appropriate. Against their ignorance, we cannot submit. Their baseless excuses we must resist. It's not just a difference of opinion when you say we shouldn't exist. It's not being our true selves that causes societal harm. It's branding us as inferior that should sound the alarm that maybe those intentions don't live up to the ideals of a loving God or country. To your better loving nature, we appeal. So 400 plus years worth of anguish and strife of not being allowed to live a gay life, fully open without shame right here in Plymouth, has put me and others at somewhat of a zenith. Looking from above, we see our past, present, but also a future, where LGBTQ people can live here safe and secure. When I look at my students, I am truly inspired by the next generation's loving desire to affirm, accept, include, and be open, regardless of gender, sexuality, or expression. It is they who have given me the strength to finally say to them and other students, yes, in fact, I'm gay. As if they didn't yet, but, yeah. To realize that I should never feel that I have to hide, that I'm married to Adam, that I can live with pride. It's taken me over 3 decades to realize I'm normal and disregard those who would call me immoral, simply for loving my husband with all that I am as an unashamed, open, and proud gay man. But we cannot rely on hope alone. If there's one thing that history has definitely shown, it's that the forces of bigotry, intolerance, and hate will always deride us for taking up space. Yes, there will always be bullies clouded by their own trauma who will try to make us live according to their dogma or put us down by other harmful methods, but to them and to everyone, we must deliver this message. We live here too, and we always have been. Who we are is equally valid. So you can try to relegate us to the closet and make us repent for who we love or how we present, but we're done letting you decide that it's us who should hide. We're here, we're queer, it's been almost 400 years. Get used to it.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was awesome. So up next is going to be Cheryl Katon. And Cheryl lives right here in Plymouth. And, okay. Thanks everybody for coming out today. Such a nice day for this. And here's Cheryl.
Oh, it is. I'm gonna take my shades off. It is so nice to see everybody here today. I want a special shout out to all my friends at First Parish Plymouth. I am so appreciative of all of your support. A shout out to obviously the organizers for Plymouth Pride, Nikki, Becky, Samantha, everybody who really put this whole thing together. I am really grateful to be here. And of course, thanks so much for everybody that takes time on a Saturday to just come here and listen and be together in our fellowship, in our time together. I am honored to share my thoughts and my stories. I hope that my insights will help some of my siblings on a similar journey, and maybe help some allies as well. Professionally, I'm the Vice President of Resource Development for Fenway Health, a position I just recently took about 2 months ago, and I am super excited about and proud to help our trans community professionally and our LGBT community professionally. I am honored to occasionally represent the trans community, but it should be noted that I am not representative. My story is my own, and I am among the very lucky and the very privileged. Although I just publicly came out a few months ago in this greater context, my transition journey really spans about 50 years. During that time, I have identified or lived as just about every letter in the LGBTQIA acronym. As a child, my first outward expressions of my trans identity began around age 6. Some of them I remember very clearly, and others have been told to me by family members. I clearly remember a fight with my mom who would not let me wear my sister's Catholic school uniform to first grade. I remember a babysitter who tells a story about me attempting to sever my penis from the rest of my body. These were isolated stories at that age, but by the time I was 11, my trans identity consumed my thinking. During my teen years, I would spend hours and hours at the library each week looking for tiny morsels of information. I memorized TV shows that had reruns with a brief trans character, and on certain afternoons I would spend every half an hour turning on the TV, flipping the channels for various reruns, and then when those characters weren't there, shutting the TV off to go back to whatever else I was doing. I gave myself my name and referred to myself as Cheryl internally. I prayed to stop growing taller, to wake up one morning as Cheryl, and I prayed for a world where I could be myself. Although my trans identity dominated my thinking, I outwardly presented as a regular adolescent boy. I like sports and rock and roll, and I love scouts and camping and adventure. Adults assumed that my inability to talk with girls was about shyness, not knowing that it was truly about envy. During those years, my trans identity was deeply hidden. It was hidden because of shame and guilt. The people who I was closest to told me throughout those years that those feelings were wrong, bad, immoral, and that I would go to hell and I would amount to nothing. They told me that people who are gay are sick and people who are trans were crazy. Of course, all those fleeting moments on those TV shows and those paragraphs hidden in books, hidden in stacks, hidden in libraries reinforced what my family, the church, and society was telling me. I was doomed. As a teenager, society told me I had two options. It was a real dilemma. I could transition and hope to eke out a living and an existence on the edge of society, forever becoming one of them. Or I could bottle it up and stuff it away and live an acceptable life. In that acceptable life, I could be a good parent, I could make a good living, I could be loved, I could belong. After years of teenage deep depression and slightly more sophisticated research, I finally created a way to split the horns of the dilemma. I rejected the shame that they put upon me, well, at least in part, and I would reject the idea that my identity in life had to be either or. I ended up living in a deeply compartmentalized bi-gendered life. Instead of choosing either or, I chose both. For people I was close with, my wife, and eventually my kids, and eventually my kids, and my closest friends, they all knew both identities. As a trans woman, I would take my professional nonprofit skills and put them to work for the trans community as a volunteer. As a straight cis man, I would marry, have kids, have a great career, and a classic American suburban life. These two identities never crossed, just like Clark Kent and Wonder Woman. We were never in the same place at the same time. Later in life, my two identities began to dissolve, and I would share some of my most fascinating insights in conversations with my friends of color. My two public and well-known identities helped me to develop a next-level code-switching skill. Society has changed more than I ever thought it would. If I could speak to my depressed, tragic 16-year-old despondent self, I would tell that person that someday they would grow up to be a happily married woman with a great and meaningful career, a recognized leader with a tremendous group of friends and a wide network. If that 16-year-old could believe me, they would want to get in a time machine. They would want that moment, they would want this moment to get there as quickly as possible. They would want to see this crowd for themselves, because in 1984, this moment was an unrealistic, unattainable future reality. Being trans has more to do with society than it does a male brain or a female brain. It has more to do with society than what's between my legs or how I present. In society, it has more to do with a sense of belonging and the worth and dignity of each individual. For trans people and for the LGBTQIA community in general, society wielded and still wields shame as a weapon. Society used and still uses shame to justify violence. Society twists that shame into policy and law. Pride is the antidote to shame. I see you, I hear you, you are valued, you have dignity, you are worthy of love. I am happy and honored to represent the trans community, but I am not representative. Not everyone has the stamina to live a compartmentalized life. Not everyone has the stamina to live a compartmentalized life for 30 years while we wait for society to catch up. Not everyone has the privilege of my skin color. Not everyone has the privilege or the inclination to strive to cis-normative beauty standards. Not everyone finds the soulmate who loves you regardless of your gender presentation. Or friends who support you on a 50-year journey. Pride is the antidote to shame. Our community's forebears taught us that truth. Our heroes like Martha P. Johnson, Brenda Howard, Gilbert Baker, Harvey Milk, Nathan Fain, Larry Kramer, Larry Mass, Paul Popham, Edmund White, Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon, and hundreds of other leaders fought for us from Stonewall to the Supreme Court. Each hard-earned step creates an opposing pushback and mounting shame. The thing about the shame is cumulative, and so is the expression of pride. For every expression of your existence is wrong, an equal response of you are valued is required. When those sentiments of wrongness and shame are leveled at impressionable children and youth by caretakers, and the equal response is exercised in adulthood, well, that's not really an equal response. If you'd like to measure and contextualize the amount of shame that society puts out into the world aimed at the LGBTQIA community, simply count the rainbows. Count the rainbows at every Pride event, in every city, in every town, every rainbow crosswalk. Count every rainbow bumper sticker, every time the White House is awash in rainbow lights. Count every rainbow meme, and count every rainbow capitalist t-shirt. Count all those rainbows and count them for decades. Recognize that the need for that rainbow expression is an antidote for every expression of shame leveled at someone. When you speak with a gay man who proudly says, I've been coming to Pride events for 50 years and I still get choked up, what he is also saying is, I receive so much shame in my life that I require all of this affirmation to offset that damage. To see the volume of shame, simply count the rainbows you see throughout your life. And recognize that the shame outnumbers the number of rainbows you could ever count. This is why we are here today at Brewster Gardens in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We are here to say that pride is the antidote to shame. I see you, I hear you, you are valued, you are worthy, I love you, happy Pride.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Love you, Cheryl. So Cheryl is amazing, and I'm so happy that we got to have Cheryl speak here today. And our next speaker is going to be Harry Helm. Harry Helm is our newest select board member here in Plymouth.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks to everyone who's organized this and all of you for being present. Yeah. In case you're wondering why I'm joining our Pride celebration today and tomorrow, my name is Harry Helm, and I'm Plymouth's first openly gay selectman. Yes, after 400 years, America's hometown has a gay selectman. And I want to introduce one of the reasons behind this. He's standing there in the back. Tom Kenny, my husband. Tom, raise your hand. Tom, without your support, your forbearance, your sacrifice, your humor, your perspective, your shoulder when I needed to rest my head, I would never have survived the last few months, or the last several years for that matter. Thank you. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what I'd say today, several days in fact, and nothing really came through. And it wasn't until this very morning, as I was catching up on, things, I was bombarded from everywhere. My news feed to friends' posts, social media, and texts with stories of courage and love. Courage and love. And that is what our Pride community is all about. It's amazing to be standing here today with all of you. Because back in 1970, as a 12-year-old, realizing I was very different from my friends in a very fundamental way, a day like today wasn't even faintly on my mind. What was on my mind was that at the time I was classified as mentally ill for being gay. What was on my mind was a life ahead spent in the furthest back part of a closet. But 50 years is a long time, I guess, and today we can all join together in this public space and others around the country to celebrate exactly who we are as human beings, and that we're not just okay, we're fabulous. Always remember the people who have fought before us, and remember that it was their courage and their love that brought us to this point, and that a miracle of courage and love is available to each and every one of us every single day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you so much for coming. All right, so next up we have Patrick Flaherty, who is one of our biggest allies in town. He's a select board member as well, and he personally came down and fought for us to get the crosswalk on the waterfront. So, big and tall, and little and small, here we are.
Oh wow, listening to the speakers and just the courage that's here today, it's an honor just to be asked to say any words here on behalf of myself and on the town, but it is really great to have this happening right here in Plymouth with all these LGBTQ plus individuals and allies, and just Nicole and Plymouth Pride. Just thank you for organizing this today and bringing it here in this awesome space, and this is just really great. So I just got some more love for Plymouth Pride, because without you guys doing so much, we know what it takes to get an event like this together, but I was really proud to work on behalf of the town with Plymouth Pride on the installation of the crosswalk last year, the rainbow crosswalk in the Progress flag colors. And it's just one of those visible signs of the town's commitment to inclusivity and diversity that is where Cheryl, just another rainbow for us to have. And also we have dozens of No Place for Hate signs that look just like that shirt that Sarah has on across town, as another physical reminder of what our town's values are. So when someone comes in, they see what this town is all about. And what's important for me, and I'm honored to work alongside Harry as well and the rest of my colleagues in the select board, is that it's not just about the physical signs in our community, but we've also last year adopted on behalf of the town a No Place for Hate pledge that is guiding a renewed look at our policies, including hiring practices and everything that we put forward moving for the rest of time. We can't go back 400 years and right every wrong, but what we can do is start from today and every day looking forward to just be better. And that's something that I'm just proud to keep working on with everyone here. Plymouth Pride, everyone here who's so strong, and it just, I don't know, it's an honor to be able to say anything today with all these people here that are just so strong and so courageous. Just thank you and happy Pride.
Thank you so much, Patrick. You've really been instrumental in helping us get some stuff started in town, so we really appreciate you being here. So I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. I want to say thank you to my board, Hannah, Paula, and Sam. I want to say a big thank you to my fiance, Becky, because without Becky, none of this would be happening, because I need all the support in the world from her I can get. And also, at 2 p.m. today, we're having a concert at the Hedge House. The Vox Hunters will be playing a little folk music if anybody's interested in coming down. And then for anybody who might not know, tomorrow we are having Plymouth's very first Pride Festival at Mayflower Brewing Company. Everybody come on out. We'll see you there.
Awesome. You gotta come and hear them. They're the bomb.
It's a wrap.